Right at the top there, sir.
That's perfect. So I get you guys all in right there. May I give this to you? Yes, thank you. Not super clever. You're in control now.
I'm the controller.
We give that to Haley. Thank you.
Hello. Oh, there we go. I think we're about to get started. I did hear that there may be a couple of veterans who maybe need to be seated in a chair. Is this true? If that's true, raise your hand. If you're a veteran and you needed to be seated. Okay. Okay. So we thought maybe if we opened the partition, we were going to have enough room. So I want to just say I really appreciate this turnout from Washington County. I know we have people from Kane County here. Like, this is such an awesome turnout. So happy to see all of you. If you aren't comfortable standing, we are going to be streaming this from Facebook and YouTube. Yeah, so we will be streaming this as well so that you can watch it from elsewhere if you'd like to. And I think we're going to go ahead and get started.
Yes, thank you. We apologize about the space, but we're proud of all of you for showing up. So we're going to start with a prayer by Joanne Brinton. And then there's not a flag in here, but I have one on my computer. We're going to do the pledge after that. Oh, it's in the back. Good. Perfect. I couldn't see it earlier. So we'll do the pledge following the prayer. Thank you.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are thankful to be here to gather as this great nation and to hear from our representative and candidates that are running for office. We are so grateful for the people who jump in to serve this country and for this nation that we love, and pray that a spirit of good discourse will be here, that people will be able to be calm and hear the messages that are given. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right, please stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just a couple announcements. The library alarm does go off now. So if you need to exit, use the outside door. However, you can go out this door to use the restrooms. Just don't go out the front door, if that makes sense. So exit out the outside door. You can use the restrooms, but we don't want the police to come here unnecessarily. So, all right. And then other announcements. If you're a county delegate, tomorrow night at Dixie Tech, there's a candidate meet and greet, 5:30 to 6:30. The candidates will be there. There'll be a state school board debate. Is that state and county delegates? Thank you. There'll be a state school board debate at 6:30, and then following that, there'll be a state senate debate, state senate 29, district 29, following that. So you'll want to attend that tomorrow night. And then Friday night, there's also a candidate meet and greet, which there'll be a variety of candidates from all over the state races. And you should have received an email on that. So what time does that start? 6 to 8 is the Friday night meet and greet. So take note of those if you want to attend those. Okay. Well, thank you so much for.
So we just taught the world We're gonna have to
Oh,
stand anyway.
okay. Well, the candidates are giving up their seats if anyone wants to take a chair, so thank you. Appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Okay, well, the questions are all coming from you guys. We've got a good stack to start with, but if you have more, then pass them up. Alexis is going to review the rules on timing, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so we're gonna allow each candidate 3 minutes for an opening statement. For each of these questions, we found that about 2 minutes works, so we'll ask the question and we'll allow each candidate, and we will be rotating who goes first the whole time. So Colby is gonna start with a 3-minute opening statement, but then when it comes to the first question, it'll start with Ty and we'll just rotate that way. Kurt's gonna be timing. Oh, Kurt and Jordan are gonna be timing for us. So 2 minutes to answer questions, and then we will wrap up with closing statements. 2 minutes for closing statements for these candidates to earn your vote. If a candidate is mentioned during another candidate's remarks, we will allow 30 seconds to 1 minute for a rebuttal from that candidate. Okay. All right. So yes. Oh, and we have a request for everyone to turn off their phones. Unless you're taking pictures, because this is a really awesome turnout. Okay, all right, we'll start with Colby.
Good evening. I am Colby Jenkins, and thank you to the Washington County Republican Women for hosting tonight. I want to acknowledge my wife, Heather. I hope that you'll all take a chance to say hi to her tonight as well. I am a small town boy, born and raised in Roosevelt, Utah, the Uinta Basin. More than 30 years ago, I left the basin to go to the United States Military Academy at West Point. 30 years ago, I raised my hand and swore an oath to support and defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, those 30 years have taken me around the world, but that Constitution has been my foundation. For 3 decades, I've lived and breathed defending the Constitution. I've even literally been willing to give my life for it in combat. Now, first in my 30 years as a Green Beret, I led my Special Forces A team in combat in Afghanistan, where I had the opportunity to work with all kinds of tribal chiefs, learning how to work with people who didn't see the world like I did, who didn't look like me or think like me. But I had to earn their trust so that my mission could be successful with them as my partners. Now, that experience served me well for the next battlefield that my command sent me to work with a different set of tribal chiefs. And that was Washington, D.C. In the mic. Pause the time.
We're having great luck.
Just like any combat op, the enemy always gets a vote. We'll start again. All right. So the second battlefield that my command sent me to was Washington, D.C., where I learned how to work with different tribal chiefs. I was a Green Beret liaison to Congress, where I worked in the Senate, the House, and then later the Pentagon. This will not be my first rodeo in Washington, D.C. I've also spent more than 15 years in the corporate world, where I got to work with innovative, entrepreneurial people, some of the sharpest minds in our world, tackling some of the most complex problems that we face. That unique mix of experience, combat-tested leadership, corporate world experience has been preparing me to serve you in Congress. Now, I'm a Green Beret to my core. And as a Green Beret, we are always on the rescue. And while I was leading my Special Forces A team in the jungles of Colombia, our mission was to rescue Americans that have been held captive for nearly 6 years. Now, shortly after their rescue, one of the hostages told me to my face, he said, "Colby, the reason I stayed alive for 6 years was because I knew that every day you were coming for me. You or a Green Beret like you was coming for me because you're always on the rescue. And if I have the privilege to serve and fight for you, I will always be on the rescue for you. Not because it sounds snappy, but because that's who I am." As a Green Beret at my core tonight, I'm going to speak from my heart. I'm going to use facts, and I hope that we can have a robust, factual debate. But at the end of tonight, I hope that I will earn your trust and the privilege to build and lead the A-team that that will serve you so that together we can always be on the rescue. Thank you.
My name is Todd Jensen. I'm a small town, big city guy. I'm coming from Richfield, Utah currently. I have lived along Wasatch Front for 12 years. I'm just like every single one of you guys. Just an everyday, ordinary citizen who wants to put us first. Not Washington, D.C. bureaucrats, not people who are gonna be top-down government psyops, but just all of us, everyday workers. That's who we are, and that's who I'm choosing to represent. Now, I may work a normal job during the day. I have my own startup with Justice Media, but that's nothing because this fight is about all of us. Over the last 4 years, we have watched every single one of our pensions, paychecks become withered to nothing. I'm here to fight for us because these last 4 years have done nothing but kick us into the dirt. And this time, we're going to rise up. This is about we the people, not the people at the top up. So I'm going to keep this very short and sweet. I'm here from Kane County. You again. Hey, thank you for coming out. And thank you for Washington County for hosting us. Alexis has done a really great job putting this together. I'm glad to see all of you turn out and show up. This is what America First looks like. And that's who I want to represent is America First. Anyway, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I'm Todd Jensen. I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to earning your vote.
Hi, I'm Celeste Maloy. I currently represent you in Congress. A year ago, that wasn't really my plan, but in June, I stood here in Washington County and told you that you were hiring somebody to come in the middle of the Congress and hit the ground running, and that we didn't have time for someone to get up to speed. And saying that in June was brave. And now I'm standing here 3 months in, and I have hit the ground running. I've been representing you. I've been voting in Congress. I've been taking your issues to Washington and fighting to get more local control. And so now I'm standing here running with a record. I told you in June, I don't have a voting record, but I have a track record. Now I have a track record and a voting record. And you can see what I'm doing to represent you. I'm really grateful that Washington County Republican Women hosted this debate. I've been a member of that organization for most of the last 10 years. And I've said for all of that time that there is no more powerful political entity south of the Payson-Dixon line than Washington County Republican Women. And look around this room. Nobody else can pack a room like this. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for hosting. I'm excited to stand here and talk policy with you tonight. I am a policy nerd. I have been for a long time. I've spent my whole adult life serving this district. I have an agriculture degree from SUU. When I graduated from SUU, I moved to Beaver, Utah. I worked as a soil conservationist there for about a decade. Then I went to law school and came here to St. George. I worked as a deputy county attorney here and fought your fights. I've been fighting federal agencies for the people in this county for about a decade. And I'm excited to have this opportunity to keep doing that. There are a lot of things that I used to complain about that now I actually get to work on fixing. I get to be in the room where it happens. I get to work with my colleagues in Washington, D.C. to represent your interests on the national stage. And that is the honor and privilege of a lifetime. I'm proud of the work I've done so far, and I'm excited to continue that work. So one of the big parts of my job is coming back here, talking to all of you and reporting on what I'm doing. I won in a special election, so it's a really quick turnaround. Now I'm running again in the regular cycle. I won at the convention. I'm a convention-only candidate again. I'm putting my faith in the state delegates to listen to all of us and decide who has the best experience, the best principles, and the best chance of representing you in Washington, D.C. as your congressional representative. And I'm confident that's me, so I'm here to answer your questions so you can see why you want to keep me in this job for a full term. Thanks for having me here.
Okay, so we're gonna start with Ty. We're starting with an easy one, but then we can't guarantee after that it'll be easy. Okay. So if you can only choose one thing, what's the one thing you're most passionate about as you represent your voters?
The one thing that I am most passionate about is putting policy that's going to help us first. That means if we gotta blow up a tax code, let's blow it up, let's recycle it. Another thing that I'm very passionate about is what is going to put us at ease foreign-wise. We don't need to be overseas fighting wars. I know Celeste, I know you did vote for the NDAA. And that's something I'm not okay with because that sent another billions of dollars overseas to Ukraine. That's gonna stop with me. We're not gonna keep sending this over. We don't need to be there at all. We don't need to be in Israel, we don't need to be in Palestine. The only thing we need to do is to bring our troops home from around the world. We are not the world's police force. And second of all, we're gonna put us first. It's our money that pays for everything. So let's bring that power back and put us first.
Celeste, since you were mentioned, we can add more time on if you want to.
That's all right. I'll do it in my 2 minutes. So the one thing I would do in my time is fight back against bureaucracy. I talk all the time about using the power of the purse to cut down the things that the executive branch is doing that's outside of their authority. As a member of Congress, it's my job to make sure that they're staying inside of their authority. And I want to use the power of the purse to do that. We have way more federal government than we need. They're way too involved in our day-to-day lives. We're all dealing with bureaucracy in areas where we don't need it. And the bad news is taxpayers are funding all of the inefficiency. They're both sides of the lawsuits that are making things more inefficient. So my goal in life is to rein in the executive branch and get them back down to the size we can live with as a country. My quick response, I did vote for the NDAA. I'm always going to vote to pay our troops. I think it was Justice Black said, great nations like great men keep their word. If we're going to send people like Colby, who I really respect for the work he did, out to defend our nation, we better pay them and not make them wonder if they're going to get paychecks.
So the one thing you'll get from me is the one thing you've gotten from me for 3 decades, and that's supporting and defending our Constitution. Our founders intended for the Constitution, the government, to be a collaborative process where there would be negotiation, where there would be compromise. But with me, the way that I will negotiate is under the umbrella of the Constitution. If I could use my hands, I would have you imagine an umbrella over the top of me, the constitutional umbrella. And underneath that is the Constitution. And that's where I stand as your representative. That's what you should expect of me. That's what you deserve as your representative. Now, underneath this umbrella, I'll negotiate and I'll compromise and I'll collaborate all day long for your good. But the minute someone tries to get me to step outside of that protective umbrella of the Constitution, then I'm on tenuous ground and I better get back. And I hope tonight we'll be able to talk about some of these issues that were initially touched on, because I think you'll begin to see a pattern of compromise when it comes to our Constitution, on our core values that the founders intended for the government to protect and not take away from you. So for me, you're going to get the same old thing you've gotten for 3 decades, something that I continue to wear the patch on my shoulder for. I'm still a colonel in the Army Reserves. I still put my uniform on as long as it fits. It's a little tight, but I'm still serving because the Constitution is real. It's real to me. And I have friends who are in the ground who've defended it. And you will never get compromise on the Constitution when it comes to me. So thank you.
Okay, this next one will start with Celeste. They want to know, are you doing conventions? What are your thoughts on the Caucus convention system?
This is an easy one for me. It won't take 2 minutes. I'm not gathering signatures. I didn't do it last time. I'm not doing it this time. Utah's a caucus convention state. And the beautiful thing about that system is it means that we all have to go campaign to everybody in the whole district. That you all, the state delegates, have been elected to represent your neighborhoods. And I have a responsibility to show up and explain to every neighborhood in the district who I am, how I'm going to represent you, and what I want to do. The signature route is a way to get around that, and I'm not going to take that route. I'm going to put my faith in the system we have, stand up on the stage at convention, make my case for why I'm the best person to represent this district, and let the state delegates decide. That was an easy decision for me. And I really appreciate all of you for the time you're putting in to vet candidates. The system doesn't work without you. I could stand here and say I believe in it, but if you didn't show up, run to be state delegates and put in the time, it wouldn't work. So thank you for what you're doing. And I promise to be really responsive. I'm holding teletown halls. I'm doing debates. I am trying to be as available as I possibly can and answer as many questions as I possibly can, because I want you to be as informed as you possibly can when you show up at convention to vote.
So I agree. The caucus, the convention process is the central focus of my campaign and what makes our Utah, our state, strong. For me, I've been a precinct chairman. I've been a state delegate. My wife's still a member of our precinct leadership. And the caucus system, the convention, is the focus of my campaign. But here's the difference. There's a choice and a difference that you're seeing in this election, a choice in judgment. As your representative, you should demand, you deserve, and you should expect that someone who's willing and asking to fight for you does everything that they legally possibly can to win for you. I am not going to go into a target, and I didn't go into any combat operations, and leave a weapon system at home. That's not what we do as leaders. We work and we do all that we can, so we're at the finish line for you. So yes, I am gathering signatures. I am going to make sure that I do everything legally possible to be at the finish line for you. We've seen how conventions work. We've seen sometimes that things go sideways. I'm putting my faith in you, the delegates, to make sure that doesn't happen. That's our focus. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to judgment, you better demand, and you deserve someone that's going to do everything they can for you legally. And that's what we're doing. So thank you.
So when I originally signed up, yes, I put the vote. As soon as I walked out of the Capitol building in Salt Lake, I said, you know what? I'm not going to waste my time gathering signatures. Why? Because I shouldn't have to take out a loan to pay people to go do that. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to go do it myself. But I'm just like you guys. I go work every single day. I don't have time. So I'm very proud to stand here and say that I am a caucus-only person. And another part of that is I was just a state delegate. I know what it's like to have every candidate up and down the ballot call me, talk to me, ask me questions. Probably the same questions you're going to ask us. So yes, I am not going to go gather signatures. I'm going to be like Celeste, and I'm going to be a caucus convention guy only. And that's where it stands.
All right, we're starting back with Colby. This will be a fun one. Who will you be supporting for president, and who will you be supporting for governor and Senate candidates in Utah?
Make sure I hit all the marks here. Okay. So for president, easy. It's who I voted for in the last two elections and every primary, and who I will vote for now, and that's President Trump. Now, an interesting thing to note here. I voted. How can I stand before you and ask for your vote if I didn't even bother to vote myself? How can you trust me to vote for you if I didn't even bother to vote myself? Those are important distinctions in this choice that you have before you. Leadership, judgment, accountability. Not rationalizing the basic right that our Constitution provides us and what I've worn the flag on my shoulder to defend. I will vote. I have voted, and I will vote for President Trump. And I look forward to standing shoulder to shoulder with him and others that he identifies to lead and protect our nation and our border. Once again, that's where I stand. For governor, I am really enjoying getting to know Phil Lyman. Candidly, I did not know him very well before this whole process. But as we've been out along the trail, as we've personally interacted with each other, I've really enjoyed getting to know him and the stance and the courage that he's displayed standing up for government federal overreach. That's what you should demand of me, to be that final barrier on the wall between the federal government and you. And that's what I've seen Phil Lyman do until they put him in jail. So I respect that. Let's see the other choices. Senator, I'm not going to stand up here and tap dance and lie. I don't know right now. I'm getting to know the different candidates. I've really enjoyed getting to know Carolyn Phippen. Catherine, I'm screwing up. Carolyn, sorry. I've been getting to know her a little bit. Trent Staggs, I appreciate his leadership as a mayor and how he stood up for a different government overreach there. Oh, time's up. Did I miss another? Did I get through all the questions? Yeah, free. Okay, thank you.
Well, this is an easy one for the President of the United States. It's only Donald Trump and I did endorse him. So let's just keep it short and simple. When it comes down to the governor, I'm looking definitely not at Governor Caucus. I'm looking towards Bill Lyman and Carson Jorgensen. Right now, they're my top two. But I also want to be fair and give a fair shot to everybody before I make that decision as a state delegate at the convention. But those are my top two. For U.S. Senate, we got Carolyn Phippen, right? I like her. Trent Staggs is still my guy. So those are my top two right now. Now, Sylvia is governor. See, Sylvia's another one. After what Governor Cox tried to rein her back with his executive powers, I'm looking at her as well. So I'm a multi-candidate in those last two, but there's only one president of the United States, and that's Donald Trump.
I've been consistent since I first became a candidate. I've been asked, I don't know, hundreds of times who am I voting for president, and I've said, I'll support the Republican nominee. It's not up to me to choose the nominee. It's up to you to choose the nominee. Donald Trump's our nominee. I'm going to support him. I am the only one up here who's worked with the Trump administration before, and I'm the only one up here who has an endorsement from a cabinet level Trump appointee. His Secretary of Interior has endorsed me, Dave Bernhardt. You can go read that on my website. And the reason he endorsed me is because I worked with him before when he was in office. I supported the Trump administration and the things they did, and it was really good for Southern Utah. We got a lot of things done in the Trump administration, but I'd like to finish in the second Trump administration. As far as the other races go, I'm going to apply the same logic. I trust the state delegates. I trust you to go vet the other candidates. I've been friends with Phil Lyman for years. I've been friends with Carson Jorgensen for years. I know several of the Senate candidates. I'm going to trust you to go through the process, vet candidates, and choose who you want to represent you. I don't think you need me, as your congresswoman, to stand here and tell you who to vote for. And I haven't decided who I'm voting for in all those races. So I'm supporting Trump for president, and I trust you to choose who you want to represent you at the other levels.
Okay, we want your thoughts on the border and illegal immigration.
Boy, this is going to be really easy. Shut it down. And I know it may come across as inhumane because these are human beings that are coming over. I understand that. They're just like us. They're human as well. They want a better quality of life, but so do we. And we can't keep putting other people from other nations, again, above our own citizens. Now, you're, a former military guy. You're still active in the military. The one thing I see up in Salt Lake City all the time, homeless veterans. They get no love. They get no respect. They're over on Rio Grande Street right now, defecating on drugs, alcoholics. And those are the people that we need to take care of first, not illegal immigrants that come over here illegally. If you want to come here, there's a bunch of ports of entry. You go there. If you want to seek asylum, go to the port of entry. Don't come over the Rio Grande District. Don't come over any part of Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, or California. You come here through the ports of entry, and if you're an asylum seeker, you go through the proper chain of custody without skipping a beat. Otherwise, We need to humanely have a deportation system and do it very humanely, not just round them up, throw them in the back of a truck and shoo them over to Mexico. I do agree with the remain in Mexico policy. So with that, I have less than 30 seconds. Thank you. And I will pass it to the next candidate.
I've been to the border. I was in Texas in January, and what's going on there is absolutely appalling. Not only do we not have control of our border, but the cartels do have control of our border. And that's just unsustainable. It's something that none of us should feel good about. It's something none of us should have to live with. And I'm going to disagree with a little bit of what Ty said. Not everybody who's crossing that border is coming here for a better life. Some of the people coming across that border are coming here so that we don't have a better life. And sovereign nations have to have control of their borders. So whatever, the question was about the border and immigration, whatever we're going to do with immigration, step one has to be, we need to have control of our border. Once we have control of our border, then we need to fix our immigration system. We have jobs that are going unfilled in Utah because we can't get the visa workers. We can't even address that problem while our border is porous and wide open. Also, the thing I saw when I was in Texas is that we have a humanitarian crisis happening south of our border because of our failed border policies. So if you care about your fellow man, if you feel like there's a humanitarian angle to keeping our border open, you need to look again. Having our border be out of control is creating a humanitarian crisis. And we have a moral obligation to get our policy right so that the cartels aren't making millions of dollars a day trading in human suffering south of our border. This is something that we can't afford to get wrong. We have passed HR 2 out of the House. They actually did it before I got there. Right now, the problem isn't that we don't have enough laws, it's that we don't have any enforcement. And I'm afraid the only way we're going to fix that is to get a new administration. So we need a Republican in the White House.
The way we fix the border is we elect Donald Trump. So I want to call tonight is important to call out facts and make sure that we're on top of facts. We had a headline just a little bit ago. We have to elect President Trump. Tonight's the first time I've heard Celeste, the first time I've heard her openly endorse President Trump. So thank you for joining us and supporting President Trump. I appreciate that. It's important that we also vote, that our words match our deeds, that we have to vote. We have to vote if we're going to support President Trump. We have to actually do it. Now, as a combat veteran, I don't have to go to the border to recognize an invasion. I know what an invasion looks like. And what China is calling what's happening at the border right now, China is calling it the smokeless battlefield. They are infiltrating so much precursor drugs to create fentanyl with the drug cartels. And then they're backfilling that now with a human pipeline, with military-age men from China coming and walking across the border in nice clothes, papers, money, ready to go. And we have no idea where they've been or where they're going. So for us, it's not about we need more laws or we need more administration, more bureaucracy. We just need President Trump to be our president again. And we need to go back to what he was doing before, remain in Mexico, in the catch and release. Do you realize that in 1 year, we had roughly 4 million illegals that we know about come across the border? That's equivalent to a new state of Utah every year. Do you realize that? And at one point, we were peaking to 10,000 people a day. That is not okay. It begins with leadership, and it begins with leaders who support other leaders, not with words, but with deeds. And that's what you'll get from me, someone who will stand shoulder to shoulder with the Trump administration and make sure that they have what they need to secure our border. So thank you.
Did you want a 30-second rebuttal?
Sure.
Me? Because he mentioned my name.
Because you said you disagreed with him, so we just were asking Ty if he wanted a 30-second rebuttal.
So when it comes to it, the Appropriations Committee, as well as the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, they have to allocate the funds, as you know, to go towards the border. Now, we can reallocate a lot of those funds into putting more ICE agents and more border security along that. But it takes somebody strong in the House to work with the Freedom Caucus to push them, reallocate those funds into the southern border. If not, it's all a bunch of talk and no action. So let's be the action and let's get it done.
What committees would you like to serve on and why?
So I'm actually on committees right now. I'm on the Small Business Committee, which is really important in Utah. I'm also on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which is great because it has jurisdiction over a lot of water policy and roads and planes and things that really matter to us here in Utah. I'm not on the Natural Resources Committee yet, but they're treating me like I'm on the Natural Resources Committee because of my background and the expertise I have. So it also gives me an opportunity to be able to serve Utah. That's one of the committees I want to be on. And I've said from the beginning, I want to be on the Armed Services Committee. Utah needs somebody on that committee because we have really important military installations in our state, and we have a large DoD-dependent private industry in our state, and we don't have anybody on any of the relevant committees. So I want to serve on the committees that put me in the best position to fight your fights in Washington, D.C. And right now I'm serving where I've been assigned, and I'm working towards getting on the Armed Services Committee. Thanks.
So for me, I will serve where I can best serve you. And our priorities here at home are water and land. Those are our priorities. So my first priority is natural resources, naturally. Of course, I'm going to fight for our water and land. That's not even questionable. Second, as Celeste alluded to, the military resources and Department of Defense opportunities we have here in Utah are incredible and important to our economy and to our nation. So serving on the House Armed Services Committee, where I worked for roughly 9 years in and out, is somewhere where I need to now sit on the other side of the aisle, other side of the witness table. So the House Armed Services Committee will certainly be a priority, and natural resources. Now, also important to recognize, in our Utah delegation right now, we have no military experience. No one that served in combat. No one that can stand up for our DoD, Department of Defense needs and resources that we have. That's something that I also hope to add to the Utah delegation, so that you've got someone that can recognize and fight for the needs of our military needs here in Utah as well. So thank you.
So I would like to pick up where Congressman Stewart left off, and that would be the Appropriations Committee, because everything has to go through an appropriations budget regardless. So I'm going to pick up to where that left off. Another thing, yes, natural resources is a good one, but let's go back and let's do the judicial. Now, we need to make sure that our judicial branches of government need to be reined in instead of having the Biden administration, God forbid he wins, have another reign at the Judicial Committee. So we need to bring that back. And I think the Judicial Committee will rein back, and let's bring back the Declaration of Independence and their laws. We're not applying what the laws are of the land. So we need to make sure the Judicial Committee oversees every single one of our judges, whether it's federal, whether it's state. We need to bring back the power. Other than that, I want to serve on the Appropriations Committee. But here's the thing. As a freshman member of Congress, you don't get a say as much as where you get to go. Where they see you is where they're going to put you, and that is the committee that you're going to serve on. So you serve that with diligence and with fortitude. So I'll end it there.
All right. Okay, are we doing okay? Drink some water. I'm a fitness instructor. I always tell people don't lock your knees. We don't want you to pass out. So, and we do have some people trying to get in. So if there's any way to shift, we can let a few more in. So, okay. There's some more room up here. Yeah, if you. So sorry, you guys are troopers. Good job. Okay, our next question. So are we at Colby? Sorry, I forget. Okay. All right, we'll start with Colby. This is always the hot topic, the budget. So what specifically can and will you do to help balance the budget or help get us in better shape than we are?
Well, where to begin, right? Where to begin when it comes to our budget? $34 trillion because of people just voting to get along, being a rubber stamp, protecting the establishment. So for me, when I approach any opportunity to vote on our budget, on spending, on growth, I'll approach it through three lenses. One is limiting government. Any vote that I take better limit government. What I experienced in the Pentagon, the bureaucracy that happens there, when something doesn't work, rather than defund it, at least in the Pentagon and elsewhere in the bureaucracy, they just put a Band-Aid on it, create a new agency, and fund that new agency. And now you've got two streams of funding, growing government, and it still doesn't work. So they put a third Band-Aid on and on we go. So for me, if I'm asked anything related to our budget and our government, first I will approach it, am I growing government or am I limiting it? And it better be the latter. Next is fiscal conservatism. If I'm voting to increase any level of government spending, which I better not, because we don't have any money right now, unless China gives it to us. If I'm voting to spend on anything, it better be at the cost of something else. Why do we need 80,000 plus new IRS agents with full funding when we need to do something else? So for me, it will always be about what can I subtract from before I ever consider adding. There has to be that subtraction. There has to be what's called a pay for. What's going to pay for this new line of spending or this new authorization or appropriation? And then finally, the third leg that will influence how I'm going to vote on anything related to spending is national security. Is my vote going to compromise our national security? Or is it going to help it? Now, keeping in mind that we can't just grow the Pentagon's budget, the black box that it is. There needs to be accountability there. And boy, I look forward to those fights because I've seen how the sausage has been made. I've seen how it gets made. So I look forward to that. Thank you.
For me, and I've said this for a couple of years now, is we gotta treat more like a business would treat or a household would treat a monthly budget. But we gotta do it on a little bit more of a grand scale because we are almost $35 trillion in debt. Here's the problem. You wanna make a couple slashes. Okay, let's start cutting the FBI, the CIA, the NSA. Let's start cutting things that are not net positive. Thing is, if you cut the negatives out that are just freeloader backdrops, then of course we're going to keep accumulating. But the biggest problem is the bills and the pork or the special interest inside those bills. Cut the pork out. Every member of Congress should have on their website who is supporting them. So let's cut out the pork. Let's stop the special interest spending, and let's bring back government by cutting out the alphabet agencies.
Pay for is a great idea. It's also currently the rule you have to follow in the House. You can't propose anything unless you have a pay for. So that's an absolute floor of what we can do. I've listened to a lot of people talk about how they're going to cut the budget, and then I've seen a lot of them not do it. So I've tried to be really disciplined through both campaigns about talking about things that I think are really possible in our current government. Congress is pretty broken right now. The good news about that is I think it means we're going to fix things, and when we fix them, they're going to be better. One of the things we can do is what I talked about, defunding everything every agency's doing that's outside their statutory authority. It's got bipartisan appeal, which means we can probably get it across the finish line. Another thing we can do is permitting reform. So right now, federal permitting processes are costing taxpayers billions, maybe trillions of dollars a year. And if we can fix that, we cut down on a lot of government spending without having to even break a sweat. It would be good for the American people. It'd be good for the people of Utah. It'd be good for our budget. Also, we're going to have to act like grown-ups and look at the entitlement programs. Thank you. I don't know what the answer is yet on fixing them, but we've got to look at them. We can't just keep pretending that we don't know we're headed towards a cliff. So we've got to address the entitlement programs. That's the bulk of our budget. In the discretionary spending areas, we've got to cut out things that are not mandated by Congress, and we've got to get permitting reform. Those three things would take us a long way towards balancing our budget. Once we get those three things done, then let's start looking at even more drastic cuts. And we're going to have to cut things that hurt our friends. The problem we have is that everybody always wants to keep their own priorities and cut someone else's. The only way we're going to get out of this mess is if we start cutting things that actually hurt all of us and go through the pain to be a better nation on the other side where we're fiscally responsible, because we can't stay 3 or 4 trillion in debt.
There you go.
The federal government has control of nearly 70% of Utah lands. What is your plan to get control of our land again? Please give us the details of that plan.
So everybody wants us to just open up all that land. The problem is water. Without water, you cannot grow a community, you cannot grow housing, there's no infrastructure. The first part of that plan is if you put in infrastructure like water, better water reserves, better water storage and treatment facilities, then from around that, we can go into individual states and say, hey, look, Bureau of Land Management, we're gonna take all this land out in Milford. We're gonna take all this land out in Washington County. We're gonna take all this land and we're gonna take it away from you. But the problem is it has to be in a bicameral fashion with the House and the Senate at a federal level, and then you have to bring it back to the states because of the 10th Amendment. So you have to work with states to bring that back. It can't just be one congressman says, hey, look, that 70% is gonna become 50% overnight. That's just not the way it works. So you have to get your local state involved, work with your counties, work with your county commissioners, bring all that back, bring it to the table and say, hey, look, we want all this land back, but we gotta have water resources first before we can allocate all that land. But yes, we need to get all that land back out of federal control because there's too much for them to oversight. So I'll keep it that short.
So as has been said tonight, land and water are the 2 most important issues that we are facing in the future in this district. Luckily, that's what I have 20 years of experience working on. So how are we going to get our land back? It's kind of a misstatement. How are we going to get our land in the first place? And that's something that I spent a lot of time working on. Utah passed a law in 2014 demanding that the federal government turn over title to all of our public land. They didn't do it. The federal government still has title. What it's going to take is an act of Congress. That's really the only way to do it. And in order to get this through Congress, we have to have a plan for how we're going to use it, and we have to be able to convince a lot of people outside of Utah it's a good idea. I'm willing to play the long game on that. In the short term, there are a lot of things we could do to make it easier on us under the system we already have. Defunding things agencies shouldn't do that are outside of their authority is one of those starts. So the BLM introduced the conservation rule a couple of years ago. They haven't tried to implement it yet, I think because they know it's illegal, but it is the opposite of what Congress told them to do. Congress directed agencies to manage BLM land for multiple use and sustained yield. They proposed a rule that is not multiple use and pushes uses off and is not what Congress told them to do. We need to cut funding to everything like that. Any state like Utah that has this much federal land should have way more control over what's happening in our backyards than we do. There are a lot of things we can do in the short term to address this issue while we play the long game on getting title to the land. And that's what I know how to do. That's my area of expertise. That's why I have an endorsement from Trump's Secretary of Interior, because nobody knows these issues as well as I do.
So what we have before us here is a question, a choice, a contrast between being an expert and being a leader. Leadership is what is required for battling for our water and our land. 20 years of experience, 20 years of experience. Now under President Obama, we saw Bears ears get gobbled up. When Trump came in, what happened? We got some of it back, we got a lot of it back. Biden comes in, Grand Staircase, Escalante, all of those monuments are now being gobbled up by the president. President Trump did more for Utah's lands, resources, permitting, grazing, access than any of our local leaders. But yet our representative, who claims to have 20 years of experience, didn't even bother to vote for him. So for me, that's a clear contrast. If you have experience and you see how well our lands have been defended and have been restored by leadership, then you should support that. And so for me, you will get someone who will stand shoulder to shoulder with the Trump administration, with the new director of the BLM, with the new director of the EPA, with the new director of the Forest Service, and on down the line, so that we can adequately fight and defend our water and our land. You need leadership that you can trust, that will be loyal to the leaders who have already succeeded for us. So that's how I would approach those. Thank you.
Celeste, you don't need a rebuttal? Okay. All right, our next one, we're doing okay on time, candidates? Are you okay for a couple more closing statements? Okay. FISA is a hot topic, right? So what is your position on FISA? How do you think Congress should handle that? I forget, who's up? Is it Celeste? Okay, thank you.
Well, I'll tell you how I think Congress should handle FISA because I've been handling it. So FISA is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It came around in the 1970s to put some sideboards on the intel community to make sure that they weren't abusing Americans. They're only authorized to surveil foreign people outside the United States. We all know that that's been abused. It's been abused through Section 702 of FISA. So what Congress should do is reform Section 702, and that is what we're working on right now. I've heard a lot of people clamoring for FISA to be allowed to expire, which it will do next month if we don't reauthorize it. If we let FISA expire, those other safeguards that are in it also expire. So instead of letting it expire, we need to reform Section 702, which we're working on. And when I voted for the National Defense Authorization Act in January, we extended FISA by 4 months because we have two competing Republican bills that are both bills to reform Section 702. So we gave ourselves 4 months to let the chairman of those two committees that both have jurisdiction over this question get on the same page on reform. Both of them want it reformed. And out of 40-something points, they agree on 35 of them. So we gave them 4 months to hammer out the rest of those agreements. Every day since we gave it the 4-month extension, I've checked in with those committees to make sure we're on track to get it done. It's to the point now where when I see my colleagues in the hall who are on either of those committees, they're like, I know, guys are reformed, we're on it. So what Congress needs to do is fix 702 without throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We need sideboards on the intelligence community. We need to make sure they're not spying on Americans. That's what FISA is intended to do. Before that, we didn't have courts, we didn't have warrants involved in this process. Now we do, but we've got to close that loophole that they've been abusing.
If it doesn't get changed, how are you going to vote?
I'm not going to extend it again.
Okay, so where to begin on this? As a military man, saying that it's okay to put FISA 702 on the backs of the military is offensive. Those in uniform do not support and defend the Constitution so that they can have an unconstitutional provision attached to them. So I worked the National Defense Authorization Act for 9 years. In some way, shape, or form, I've been connected with the NDAA. Members of Congress always like to do the shell game. And what you heard tonight was the establishment speaking. More of the same, more of the same. FISA has been on life support for 20 years. And it's continued because Congress, the establishment, continues to keep it plugged in. Plugged in. When the NDAA vote came up, there was more than, it wasn't a binary choice. It wasn't yes or no. There was a third choice that some people had the courage to stand up and do, like Senator Lee. The third choice was, do your job. It's not yes or no. A no vote on the NDAA means I'm doing my job. We're going to pull the NDAA back. We're going to pull out that poison pill, FISA, which allows the federal government, okay, brief survey, who's ever donated to President Trump? If you want to raise your hand. Who may or may not have been in DC on January 6th? The federal government has been spying on you, and that's known. Senator Lee called it out. So for me, back to the beginning, what you're going to get from me is somebody who stands on the Constitution. Not for one day, not for one more single hour, not another minute am I going to allow the federal government to spy on you. The military still gets paid. The NDAA, if Congress does their job, pulls it back, detaches that provision pill, that poison pill, and then has to pass a cleaner bill. So it requires someone to fight for that.
So when it comes to FISA, let's just do the humane thing and let it die a natural death. End it now, but when it comes to the NDAA side, let's also bring back the power of the federal bureaucracy come to spy on us. Now, if you've seen any of the January 6th stuff, we all know that was a lie and it targeted Americans, which is illegal, it's unconstitutional. So therefore, we rework it.
That's my question.
We rework
What
it.
do you do about it?
We get all in a group
We have
together,
family in prison right now.
okay?
We have family. They did nothing. So what are we gonna do about it?
So therefore, we go in the court system, we work with the courts. I get the Republican members of the House and the Senate to work in bicameral fashion. We rework the NDAA to where it benefits the American people first and not the world's police, and end the spying on the American people. We have to have those provisions and end the FISA and end the FISA courts and just let it die a natural death. So I'm very sorry that you have somebody in your immediate family,
Fucking veterans
veterans.
that fought for this country are in prison right now.
Let's get them out.
Get them out. Get them out.
Let's just get them out. Let's go to the justice courts.
That's my family. It's the best. That's my
Amen.
family.
All of our families.
But it's not just all the military either. It's all of us. Have you ever noticed this uptick in the Trump support? They come after us. They come after all of you who have an opinion that goes against the establishment. So yes, end FISA, rework the NDAA, and let's move forward with a better path.
Did you want to rebut, Celeste?
So when a bill comes to the floor for a vote, there are three options: yes, no, and present. Those are your only options. Once it's on the floor for a vote, you don't get to say take it off the floor and rework it. That's how floor procedure works. So you get to vote yes or no. And just for the record, Senator Lee also voted yes or no. He voted no. This is an issue that I know really well. Most of this reform bill for 702 was written by Congressman Chris Stewart while I worked for him. We do not need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need to fix 702. So that's why we have a committee to investigate the weaponization of the federal government because of your family, because of these Section 702 violations. This is why majorities matter. We have a very slim majority right now in the House, but with a slim majority, we're fixing a lot of these problems.
Voters deserve just a little bit of clarification. That one quick follow-up. Voters deserve one more.
Okay, 30 seconds.
So you just heard the establishment speak one more time, knowing how bad it is, knowing how much the government has abused it. For me, you will not be spied on. Your constitutional principles will not be compromised for one more hour. You vote no. You vote no. You have courage. You stand up for your constitution. You vote no. That's not why my friends are in the ground. That's not how we rationalize our representation of the Constitution. You vote no.
You know, and again, the NDAA gave more power to these alphabet agencies like the CIA and the FBI to weaponize the political establishment that's in current against the American people. We know that's for fact. It's not just about the, I believe, what, $80 billion that was going to go to Ukraine? No, you have to rework it so it favors us, the American people. And you can't do that with the establishment in current form. It has to come from an American first approach to make sure we rein back that power.
Okay. Did we decide who's starting? We've got two more questions, if that's okay, and then closing statements. Okay. We want to know your position on energy policy. We know that really does impact America. It definitely impacts Utah. We'd like to hear your positions on that.
I went first last time.
Okay.
Thank you. Having been born and raised in the Uinta Basin, where oil is the lifeline of our economy, of our livelihood, I can respect the need for us to have energy independence. And back to what we've been talking about tonight, this is a question of leadership. Leadership. How will I vote and how will I stand with leaders who will lead? That's what I plan to do. So for me, any opportunity we have to responsibly develop natural resources here in our district, or where you will find me fighting. One example off the top of my head, up in Millard County, up near Delta, there's a geothermal opportunity to explore and develop there. Why can't we do more opportunities like that? Why can't we develop that? Rather than say we're going to stop our exploration and stop drilling and stop developing and then getting all of that from abroad and just outsourcing the jobs and outsourcing the resources and becoming more dependent on our adversaries, we need to become more self-sufficient here at home. So it's back to leadership. I will support and lead and stand shoulder to shoulder with President Trump and members of the new administration so we can responsibly and effectively return energy independence and self-sufficiency here to our district. There's so many opportunities we need to fight for.
So when it comes to energy, I live in Sevier County. Suffolk Mine is pure coal. And what's powering our lights right now? Coal energy. Wind turbines and solar panels, they're a fantasy. It's not sustainable. It's gonna die out one day. And when we take those products to a landfill, it's gonna take thousands of years, not hundreds of years, to decompose. So I want to introduce legislation that will push hydroelectric energy, fusion energy, and nuclear energy, but without the downwinder effects from the 50s. So let's put in nuclear energy, keep our coal and our natural gas, and let's just keep us and ours first, because what we really do need is energy independence. The second we got off of energy independence, look at what happened to our economy. It almost died because we keep relying on solar and wind that are not sustainable long term. Let's look for long-term effects now with nuclear and fusion energy.
Yeah, our energy policy really matters, and this is another place where experience is really important. We should be energy independent. We were energy independent during the last administration. The only reason we're not now is because of policy that came out of the White House. It wasn't a vote in Congress. It isn't that our natural resources have changed. It is directives that came from the White House. We can produce a lot of energy here in Utah, and we are producing a lot of energy here in Utah. The geothermal resources that we're researching in Beaver County, I've worked with them to help them cut through government red tape to make sure that they can do the research they need that'll help us be able to produce geothermal energy in other places we didn't think were hot enough. The Suffolk mine, I've worked with them to cut through government red tape to make sure they can keep producing coal and to make sure they can get their coal to the power plants. Energy independence doesn't just happen. You have to understand the entire grid and the system. We've got to have baseload power. I'm fine with green energy. Let's keep researching it, but it should be private dollars doing it. And let's have an all of the above energy policy instead of a tie our own hands behind our back and buy energy from our enemies' energy policy. When I talked earlier about permitting, that's one of the big obstacles to a lot of our energy policy. So it's not just opening up and saying we're willing to do it again. We've got to reform the process for how we get these things online. Allowing it while we have the permitting obstacles we have right now won't do us any good. You can't just turn these things on and off. We've got to streamline permitting. We've got to make it make more sense. And we've got to stop robbing the taxpayers while they're paying for both sides of lawsuits and lengthy years-long permitting processes that just keep us from being able to use our own natural resources. So that's my plan. That's what I know how to do. That's what I'm willing to go do for you every day.
All right, we've got one more, and then we'll let them do their closing statements. I think this is a great question. Whoever wrote it. Give us a specific example on how you will base your votes, and how does the Constitution influence the way that you'll vote? So I think Ty.
Sorry, will you repeat that one more time?
Sorry. So how will the Constitution and give us a specific example on how you will base your votes as you go to approach a vote in Congress?
Very easily. Does it infringe on your rights and your constitutional rights? That's the first step. Every single bill that comes up for a vote, is it going to circumvent the 10th Amendment, which is states' rights? Is it going to violate your First Amendment? Is it going to take away your Second Amendment rights, which is backed up by the First Amendment? We gotta make sure that our constitutional provisions are kept and upheld. So you gotta put your morality and your ethics, your personal ethics inside every single vote. And it can't be just from whoever pays you the most. Now, I know Congress is a bit pay-to-play game. That ends with me. You gotta do what's best for us and our people here in Utah and second district and put us first. We cannot sit here and put an establishment in power no longer. But it has to come down to what's constitutionally legal, what is valid, and what's the morality of it. And that's how I will vote.
This is easy because I've been consistent on this answer for 8 months now. There's 3 filters every vote goes through. The first one is, does Congress have the authority to do this? Which is the constitutional question. Is it constitutional? Just saying the word constitution doesn't necessarily mean you understand how it's supposed to work. So power in this country is divided vertically and horizontally, and that's what keeps us free. The purpose of government is to protect the freedoms of the people. And we have federalism, which separates power between the federal government and the states. We also have separation of powers within the federal government, keeps each branch from getting strong enough to violate your rights. What we've had for the last several decades is an imbalance between those branches. The executive branch has gotten stronger and stronger, and the legislative branch needs to act as a check on that. The judicial branch also acts as a check, and they've been signaling for 2 or 3 years now that they want the legislative branch to do a better job. That's one of the things I want to do. That's one of the reasons I wanted to run. So first filter, do we have the authority to do this? That means, is it constitutional? Second filter, does it make Americans more free? That's our job. Third filter, is it good for the people of Utah's 2nd Congressional District? Because I owe my loyalty to you, the people at 2nd District. I'm not there to represent anybody else. So those are the 3 filters I put my votes through.
Hold on a second. I'll show you how I'm going to approach this with this. Article 1, Section 8. So that's where I'll vote, right there. That's the powers, the authorities that Congress has the ability to pass law on. I don't need to stand here and pontificate. This is what will guide me. This is what will guide me. Now, some examples. Let's talk about education. Let's talk about education. How much money, how much authority has our Congress, has our government ceded to the Department of Education? Those are battles that I look forward to having. Federal dollars, federal overreach into our education system needs to stop. When you talk about where I'm going to take opportunities, it's going to be there. I believe in this thing that the people out on the trail have been teaching me. It's called parental sovereignty. Parental sovereignty. Parents own and should have every bit of control on how their children are being educated. And the federal government has no right retaining those dollars and that authority to restrict and force what a bureaucrat in DC thinks our children need to be taught. Another example, you asked for specific examples. The UN needs to be abolished. When you look at what's happened in Gaza, the UN has literally participated in the invasion into Israel. But yet we have people that still argue that that specific agency in the UN should still be funded. You need people who will stand up and fight for those fights. You need people who you can depend on, who will pull back that government overreach, not give the president more power, like with FISA, with the FBI, allowing the federal government to look at you and say, we're going to keep trying. Give us 4 more months and maybe we'll do better. Wait, maybe give us 4 more months. And maybe they've been saying that for 20 years. Yes. That is where we have to fight. That is where it has to stop. What time do we have? Time? You can't see the time.
that again?
You talk about FISA.
Yeah.
That's like 1/1,000,000 of 1%. I have a nephew that works NSA up at Camp Williams. He records everything you do. Your cell phones, your emails, your anything that's digital, even your smartphones and your
We can
smart
talk to
TVs in your
candidates
house.
after. We're at closing
We all have questions.
Closing statement.
We all have comments. It's their job to speak to us.
All right.
Explain on your-
Closing statements, I'm sure they'd be willing to talk to you individually after, so check with them.
I'll start my closing statement with this. I'm gonna have a teletown hall on Wednesday. Log in if you want to ask me more questions. I'm gonna give you plenty of opportunities to hear from me. I am really proud to stand here in front of you as your United States Congresswoman. When I got sworn in, Speaker Johnson said he'd never seen so many people show up to support a candidate, and a lot of you were there, and I really appreciate the support I've gotten from Southern Utah. I've been here working side by side with you for my entire adult life. When I stood on that stage in Delta in June, I said, this isn't my first time in Delta. I've been in Washington and West Valley and Bountiful and Bicknell with all of you fighting these fights, and that's more true now than it was even then. The one thing that you can tell for sure if you look at my track record is that I care about this district, and I really care about protecting the people and the resources in this district from federal overreach. This isn't something I woke up and decided I wanted to do 8 months ago. This is something I've spent my entire adult life doing. I'm doing it now. You can look at my record, and if you give me a full term to keep doing it, I think you're going to be blown away at some of the things we could get done. There are issues specific to this county that I know how to get done that nobody else has any background in. They have to get up to speed on them, and you don't have time to wait for things like the Northern Corridor and to be able to use your habitat conservation for your tortoises. You can't wait and let this county stop growing while people figure out how to work the tortoise issues. I'm here, I'm doing it, I'm honored to do it, and I want to keep doing it. Thank you.
So a few weeks ago, while we were at the town hall in Hurricane, actually, we were talking about all the issues of the day, and a woman at the end of the meeting looked at me just exasperated and just feeling for me. She said, "Why would you want to do this? Like, why put yourself through? She was just feeling for me genuinely, and she kept saying, "What gives you hope? Like, where do you get hope from?" And as she said that, it triggered me. But it triggered me in a good way, and it reminded me of where I get hope from. Our youngest daughter, Olivia, when she was 3 weeks old, I deployed to Afghanistan. Now, knowing that I was going to deploy and that we were going to have our second daughter, my wife's right here, Heather, knowing that that was going to happen, we named her Olivia Hope, in the hope that I would return, in the hope that I could be her father someday. And fortunately for me, I served with the best of the best. I served with my A team in combat, and we came back together alive. And I've had the opportunity to be Olivia Hope's father. And now she's at West Point in her second year at the academy. She's the first girl. She's the first girl from St. George to ever go to the military academy. In 2 years, she's going to be stepping into this hot mess. She's going to be a young lieutenant leading troops on your behalf. Where do I get hope from? And why am I even standing here tonight? Is because I owe it to her and her generation. They need leadership. They need judgment. They need accountability. They need patriots. They need warriors that are worthy of the sacrifice that they're stepping up to give. So why am I in this tonight? Why am I standing here before you? It's because I have hope. Hope in my life, but hope from the generation that I see about to step into the mess that we need to be there for with them. So thank you.
If anybody ever says, why you want to run for Congress, you don't. It's a hot mess. And I wish this on nobody. But it takes the proud few of us to sit here and stand up for the everyday American people. Because that's what I am. I'm not a politician. I'm definitely not some multi-millionaire. I'm you. And I'm a representation of you. I get up every morning, put my clothes on, I go to work, come home to my family, put food on the table. I'm just like you. I'm no politician, and I'm very proud of that, thank God. Government came after me in a way. They come after the taxes, They come after our property. They come after our rights. And I said, you know what? This is BS. This is enough. When the left wants to come after us, I'm standing in their way because I'm loud. I'm proud to be an American. I'm proud to stand up with Donald Trump. I'm proud to take our country back because that's what we have to do. This election right now is the most important election probably for the next 20, 30 years. And our actions now will dictate the future. I know some of you guys in here are Gen X. I know a lot of you guys are millennials like me. I also have to work with Gen Alpha because that's who my girlfriend's kids are. I have to work with Gen X. Those are the people I want to protect as well. But it's all of us. We're all one people and we are one nation. And we are one nation under God. So let's do that. Let's bring America back and let's do it now. Thank you.
All right, a huge thank you to the candidates. Thank you for coming and giving us your answers and standing up for over an hour. And thank you all to showing up and being educated. If you're a delegate or if you're not, tell your delegates. And remember, tomorrow night, 5:30 at Dixie Tech, there's another event with multiple candidates that'll be there, and Friday night. They're asking, how many are state delegates? Raise your hand. That's most of you, I know. So, okay. All right, and yes, if you'd like to catch the candidates, I'm sure they would take an individual question or check on their next event. So thank you. We'll adjourn this meeting. Have a great night.
She didn't answer tonight.
At all. I really take copies of 5 days.
I'm just thinking. That's why. I keep the problem and I'm tired of being lied to. And I just feel like she should answer and say, I didn't go for it, but I could have pretty good answer.
I don't think her answer was very valid. I don't know why she she had every opportunity to she said, well, I didn't I had to reason. I guess the problem is every time somebody has, you never run it out. I was like, all the time. Or I had every I don't know why she did.
I like some of her answers, but as a whole, and then I'm not a fan for the green that she just voted for. I'm not a fan of that either. She said she was. And then I'm interested because she said, no, I'm not about it. But you know, this one in this missing out on the folks that actually answer the questions. I think it's extremely right now. You look stunning, like always. What do I look like her for like 10 minutes out of my life? 10. If I could look like that, just